Good evening, everyone. It is Deborah with Kensington Cross Stitch. It is Wednesday, May 10th, 2023, and it is such a pleasure to be back with you for another little, probably hour or so to talk about Flosstube and cross stitch tonight. I have a couple of things to show you. I have a new start and finish. I have a new finish, and I have a couple, first, all of my usual whips to show you, as well as some happy mail, a little tiny craft project that I did. Got a couple of Flosstube shout outs for you, and I'm actually going to spend a little bit of time talking about, again, floss organization and also kind of why it is so important to me that I work with Colorfast Floss. So, oh my gosh, can you wait for me to talk about Colorfast Floss? It's just an excitement a minute this evening. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to spending a little bit of time with you this evening. So before I get started, I wanted to say thank you to some recent subscribers. I've had a couple of new people subscribe over the last couple of weeks, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to come and check out my channel and taking the time to subscribe. It is it's really fun to have you part of this adventure with me, and I hope that you enjoy the content. And again, to all of my returning subscribers, like, the shoulders are super moving tonight. I guess we'll see how it goes. But thank you to all of my returning subscribers as well for coming back episode to episode and really spending some time with me, commenting, all of those things. So it is, I mean, this is what's fun about this community. This is what's so fun about Flosstube, is a chance to talk together and enjoy this hobby together. So thank you for taking the time. I really do appreciate it. So with that, I think I will launch into a little bit of the content that I have for you tonight. So as usual, I've got my little stack right in front of me, and we will see how things go. So the first thing that I want to show you is a new start, finish, and fully finished object. It's not as impressive as it sounds because it was a very little project, but it was something that I pulled out recently. I got to spend a couple of days away from the office, kind of doing a lot of sitting and waiting for some things to happen. So it was, as we know, it's the perfect opportunity to pull out a cross-stitch project. And so what I did is pull out one, I believe I've shown you this before. This was in my kind of kitted up projects that I was working on, that I showed you in my whip parade, I believe, back kind of early episode 2. So this is a little Mill Hill project. It is one of the tiny little ornament projects, and I got the entire thing done. So let me show you. And it is just adorable. I was realizing that let me see if I can get it to focus just a little bit for you. There we go. I mean, the beading is just so beautiful. All the little sparkly treasures on it. Really fun colors. So I had done a Mill Hill project, probably about a decade ago. It was kind of a picture frame, actually, and kind of forgotten about it, that I had done it. And so somebody asked me if I've ever done a Mill Hill. I was like, no, I don't think so. And I was like, yeah, I do. It hangs on my refrigerator. Maybe I should remember that. But anyway, so this is my second Mill Hill. It's the first of the little ornaments that I have done. And it was just, this was the perfect project to take with me and just sit for a couple of days while I was waiting around. Everything comes in the pack. It is easy to transport, easy to use. Everything is taken care of for you. And it was so nice to just sit and work on this methodically while I was sitting and waiting. In terms of finishing and fully finishing, it was very easy. I did buy some of the adhesive velvet sheets. I just found them on Amazon. And I laid my piece on top of it, traced it out, did some extra trimming with some scissors at the end. I did do kind of the holes. You'll see the cutouts, which I feel is like advanced Mill Hill finishing. I'm not sure how entirely successful I was in all of that, but I'm perfectly happy. And for the hanger, I literally just used 2 little strands of floss, which I saw a couple other Flosstubers talking about in terms of how they finish these little ornaments. So well ahead of the Christmas season, but just the perfect little project to work on for a couple of days while I was on the go. And it is stunning. It is really lovely. It's not an overly excessive amount of beading. I don't think. I thought it was a really good amount. Very easy to do. So if you have not done one before, I recommend it. But also they are, like I said, fantastic on-the-go projects. I will definitely be keeping that in mind for the future. I may have gone and added like a whole bunch of them to an online shopping cart. I was able to resist the urge to buy them because I was like, I'm not going to be doing anything coming up soon that I need to have these, but the temptation was real. It was so real. And it was perfect in my tiny little Chronicles of Narnia bag. I was able to just tuck everything away. I got this on Story Arts. So just a fun little thing. Oh, and I had added this David Bowie, I think this was a necklace that I bought on Etsy a number of years ago, but it has a little David Bowie quote, if I can hold it in my hands. And it says, "The stars look very different today," which I thought was the perfect thing for a bag about people who wind up in an entirely different universe. So anyway, good little thing together. So that is my start, finish, fully finished object all in one go. That's right, we're done. We don't need to do anything else tonight. So the next thing that I have to show you is another finish, not a fully finished object, but a finish. And this is one that I showed you in the last video, one that I just recently started. And this is Bent Creek's Homestead. And if you'll remember, I have a new SAL running, which is the Constant Cat SAL. And we do have a couple other people who have joined me on that one so far. And the intention behind this SAL is essentially, is there a pattern that you have that has a cat on it? Is it cat related? Stitch it, post it in the hashtag, and we would love to see it. Or in the way that I'm interpreting it, I'm just going to constantly have a cat project on the go for as long as it keeps my attention. But let's be real, I have a lot of cat patterns, so could be a while. So with that, I have finished my tiny little project. And I'm so happy with it. I love these colors. They're just so bright and vibrant, and they go together. To me, they play together very, very well. I love that. And so it was fun to just work on those. This tree actually has two different variegated greens in it, but I thought that they played together so well. It was so much fun to work on those two greens together and watch that tree take shape. It was so enjoyable. And of course, look at the tiny little kitty with his whiskers. Oh, he's so cute. So you'll notice that I did make a couple of changes. Essentially, I changed the color of the house, and that meant I wound up changing the color of the roof because the blue and the red together were just very strong. They were very strong, so I did change it, and it just made the chimney the red there in that case. But other than that, I just kind of brightened up the piece just a little bit, but otherwise really kind of just followed everything. I didn't use well, actually, I should take that back. There are two browns. You probably can't tell, but there are actually two browns in this pattern. It's kind of the door and the tree are one color, and the fence is another brown. They look almost exactly the same. And I accidentally pulled one of the called for threads. When I realized there were two browns, I actually had the second called for, and I pulled that. But the rest of them, I basically just pulled similar colors from my stash, but coincidentally, we all do it right sometimes. So really fun little project. When I first finished it, I thought, I'm not sure how I'm going to finish this. I'm not really feeling like I need to finish all of these projects right away because I thought, I'm going to have a whole bunch of cat patterns. I probably should actually set them aside for a while until I know more of what I have, because probably eventually they will become an entire cat-themed display at some point, and so I probably want to think holistically a little bit more about the finishing. So that lasted several days, and then today I thought of 3 separate finishes that I could do, all of which are round. And if you'll notice, this is a tiny little scrap of fabric. Making a round finish out of that might be a little bit difficult. It's doable, but you might have to make it kind of small and be careful. But anyway, so whether or not I finish it in the round before the next video, we'll find out. But if not, I'm in no rush to get it finished. We'll see what happens. Second finish. So the other 2 things that I have to show you are my 2 whips that I have been working on throughout the year. The first one is my Rainbow Temperature Supernova, and this is by Climbing Goat Designs. Returning viewers, you have seen this a number of times so far, and it essentially will look like this explosion in space once it's done. Really have been enjoying this project a lot. This is something, as I've said, I usually pull out on Sundays. It gives me a chance for an hour or so to just reflect on the week and spend a little of time focusing on what has kind of happened over that period. And we've gotten to a point where we are actually starting to circle back down to the bottom. Somehow we are in May, which is the 5th month of the year, and therefore there's not that much to go to be halfway done, which I'm trying not to think about that. I don't know how that happened. But what I'm really loving, what I was thinking as I was working on it this time in particular, is just how much I enjoy that every single week, every single line is different. There is something new, the arrangements of the stitches, the way that they fit together with the previous week and the following week is different every time. And I really am enjoying that. There is so much, I think, so much thought that has gone into this pattern. Let's see if I can actually show it to you in any reasonable way tonight. It's the end of the day. We'll see how this goes. But there has been so much kind of just careful thought in the way that the individual elements of this pattern fit together. And I have just enjoyed that. I was noticing it as I was stitching this time, how much I liked that. And the other thing that I was noticing, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it in the lighting, is, because of the color palette that I have chosen, there are a lot of blues, there are a lot of greens, there will be a lot of pinks and kind of dark burgundies, and that's essentially the color palette that I have. And throughout the year, because we've had such a mild winter, there has been blue and green pretty much throughout every week so far. But what I was noticing is you really can tell now that we are getting further into the piece that the top is predominantly blue, which is one of the colder colors. It is starting to get to be more predominantly green. And so you actually really can see a fairly subtle shift in the kind of what is the emphasis and the focus of the colors, even within the palette that I have chosen. And the fact that, the temperature range is not necessarily as extreme as it might have been because of the weather. So those were just a couple of things that I noted this week and made me think again about how much I am enjoying, first, this project in particular, the way that Claire has designed the pattern, but also really getting to enjoy the colors. And I think in part because there's really nothing else in the pattern. There's not outlines, there's not other things. I mean, there are these little explosion, kind of the white pieces. But other than that, the color is the focus of the piece. And so you really do get to spend a lot of time noting that. And I'm starting to, this week in particular, as I was really noticing that you can see that shift over time. So a fun project, something that I look forward to each week. With that, the last one that I have to show you is my biggest whip. This is the Christmas Market by Twin Peak Primitives. So if you're new, this is the project that I've been working on, although I've redesigned it, as you'll see in a minute, kind of just with a little bit of a different layout. But this is commemorating kind of the German Christmas market experience that comes every winter. And so I believe I can absolutely say that I am more than halfway on my project at this point. So this is where I am so far. And it is looking amazing. Like I had said that I was rearranging it so it really felt like it was a long row and you would be able to walk through, you had the feeling that you would be walking through the Christmas market. And I feel like you're really getting that feeling now that the piece is kind of coming together, and especially now that the Christmas tree is there in the center, which is the center of the design as well. And so I think that this is, it's bringing me so much pleasure to work on this, to see it come together. And like I said, now that the Christmas tree is there, it just feels like a coherent piece. It feels like a market in a way that up until now it's been more focused on the individual stitching each month. But I am so pleased. So in terms of progress made, since I showed it to you last, I finished this stall, which is the kind of Christmas baubles stall. And last time I had done all of the outlining, but I hadn't filled in the ecru of the stall itself. So I did finish that. We had a Connecticut Stitchers Day again last weekend, which was really fun. Got to see some new friends, returning friends, and had a wonderful time spending a couple of hours together. The one thing that I did change was originally this was labeled Bala. I think that is maybe somewhere near the pronunciation, but it was essentially the German word for balls. And I was trying to figure out, the lettering was a little bit odd, and so I wasn't quite sure what the what it said, but one of my very helpful viewers let me know what that was, and let me know that what the German word for what this kind of really was in meaning, which is these Christmas baubles. And so what I did is, it's actually very long. It's Christbaumkugeln. I am not pronouncing this right at all, which is too long to fit on one of these stalls. It's nearly as long as this word. So I wasn't going to be able to fit it on the stall. But what I did is I just changed it from the original German word for balls to this one, which could also be translated as balls, but could also be translated as baubles. It's kind of the word that is used in place of baubles in this context, which I felt was at least slightly closer to what I was looking for. And under the circumstances, there's probably what I would be happy with that. So I have finished that. That was my April section, which I finished since the last time. And then I have gotten most of the Christmas tree done. You'll see that I am just starting to work on the snow, which there is snow throughout the Christmas tree. And then on either side, there are going to be more of these people who are walking around, standing, enjoying the market. So it's, I really wasn't sure if I was going to be able to finish that middle section in 1 month. It probably is not significantly more stitching than one of the stalls themselves, but the stalls are actually fairly repetitious, other than kind of what is in the central image of the stall itself. Most of the stitching is otherwise fairly repetitious, so you don't have to look at the pattern constantly, whereas with the Christmas tree, I knew that I was going to have to be looking at the pattern pretty much every step of the way to make sure that I got it right. There's really no kind of consistency throughout that part of the image. But what I discovered when I started it is it has essentially been stitching up just as quickly, which is fantastic. So this, I think, was just kind of 2 fairly regular stitching days that I was able to get that done. So I will absolutely be able to get this piece done in this current month. And so that means there's just going to be 5 little bits left. And so I am actually more than halfway done at this point. I will definitely be halfway done by the time this month is over. I think it just looks great. I love this. I think I am going to just be so happy with this when it is done. So with that, that is my stitching for the last couple of weeks. And let me just move this over here. Yeah, that's my stitching for the last couple of weeks. So thank you for taking the time to go through that with me. With that, I'm going to transition over, talk about a couple of Flosstubers, a couple other things, and then we will go from there. So one of the things that I wanted to do is just let you know about a couple of Flosstubers that I have been watching recently and enjoying, because of course one of the things that's so wonderful about this community is the community itself, and discovering new people, whether or not you ever get to meet them, whether or not you ever interact with them in any way other than comments, or simply the fact that they are in your room, your TV room or your living room or your craft room while you are working on a project for a little while. We get to feel that connection with other people. So 3 people that I wanted to share with you tonight, and I kind of grouped them all together because for me, every single one of these Flosstubers, they are such warm, the warmth that they convey in their videos is just, it just makes me so happy. I turn on every one of their videos and it's just such a pleasant experience. There is I I can't think of a word for it other than simply a warmth to their presence and their enjoyment in this craft, the way they think about it, the projects that they work on the enthusiasm that they demonstrate for what they're working on, has just been something that I really enjoy. And so it is just like sinking into a very pleasant experience. And I enjoy watching them, even if they are not stitching things that I stitch. Not all of them do. There may not necessarily be that much overlap, but there is just something so pleasant about being in their presence and enjoying them, talking about this craft, showing things off. So that is really what I have enjoyed so much about these particular Flosstubers. So the first one is Stitch ilonka-international. So she is a German Flosstuber. And she floss tubes in both German and in English. So her English channel is Stitch ilonka-international. If you would like to watch her German channel, it's Stitch ilonka. I will link both of those. Actually, I'll link the international one, but you'll be able to find the German one. But she is just somebody that I have been watching over the last maybe a couple of months, and really enjoying. And she is so funny, and her just pleasure and enjoyment and her laughter is so infectious, and it's just something that every time one of her videos comes up, I'm just like, oh yes, I am so excited. So Stitch ilonka is one that I have been enjoying. The next one is Cross Stitch Therapy with Gracie. Gracie is in San Antonio, and Gracie also is a bilingual floss tuber. She floss tubes in Spanish and in English. They are on the same channel, so you can go and watch whichever one that you would like. But Gracie is just such, again, a warm presence. She does a lot of color changes, a lot of conversions, kind of stitching what it is that she enjoys. And it is just, it's a pleasure to spend a little bit of time with her every time she puts out a video. So that is Cross Stitch Therapy with Gracie. And the last one is Savannah, and her channel is Savvy in Stitches. And she is a young mother, a cross stitcher she's been doing this for quite some time. And she works on such a variety of stitch counts on fabrics, such a variety of projects. And she just has this infectious enjoyment of it and sharing it with others. So Stitch ilonka, Cross Stitch Therapy with Gracie, and Savvy in Stitches. I will link all of them below, but if you have an opportunity, I would highly recommend that you take a look and enjoy their channel a little bit. So with that, the next thing that I want to spend a little bit of time talking about is a little bit of a continuation of what we were chatting about last time. So in my last video, I was talking about realizing that I need to appreciate my stash and appreciate what I have for this project already. And so one of the things that led me to think about was how I organize my floss, how I organize my patterns. And so I've been working a little bit on that over the last couple of weeks. I think I had mentioned that my floss, because I tend to just sub in floss as needed, I tend to not use the called for necessarily, in part because I just enjoy the process of kitting up sometimes, and in part because I really enjoy supporting some of the newer and kind of developing floss dyers, and using those as well as the flosses that are more the more prevalent, the ones that are used in the community a little bit more. And so I had reorganized all of my floss so that it was not by dyer, but it was by color. So if I wanted to, I could just go and find all of my pale purples together, pull the one that I needed, and go from there. But then I also discovered that sometimes I'm really lazy, and it would just be easier to, if I have it, pull the called for color. Or what I was also thinking is, if I don't necessarily have the called for color, finding a very reasonable substitute, maybe from the stash that I do have. So I had asked a question about if anybody knew of a spreadsheet or an app or anything like that would organize floss, kind of keyed off of the DMC system, but would include the many different dye companies that are available. Unfortunately, there does not seem to be one that exists. I probably am gonna have to create one. There was a brief shining moment this weekend when I thought that I had found an app that did this already. I was very excited. It would have been amazing. Unfortunately, once I actually got in and started using it, it doesn't seem like it's quite what I was looking for. What I was really the thing that I liked about this app, I think it is Cross Stitch Thread Organizer. I think that's the name of the app. And this is not to knock the app at all. It has really good features for some aspects of, particularly if what you're wanting to do is inventory your floss. It's a great system. Seems like a great system. But what attracted me to it is you can also set up custom lists, and it has a color wheel where you can assign colors to a floss, and then you can automatically tell it to pull substitutes for you. That was the thing where I was like, this is it, you guys. This is it. It wasn't it. Unfortunately, the feature just, I think part of it is because you're basically working off of a color wheel with 3 pivot points. And so you're trying to use your finger on, say, a phone to specify a color, and you can get close, you can get an approximation, but because changes in tone and color are so significant in floss, and it really could make a significant difference in the flosses that you're picking, to me, I didn't find a way to make it as precise as I think that you would want, or what I was thinking in terms of really being able to pull something that is very close to another floss by another dyer. So unfortunately, it was a beautiful 24 hours where I thought, I bought this, I'm going to test it out, it's going to be working. Oh well. But I think that I am back to my idea about just creating a giant spreadsheet. I'm sure that there is a better way to do this. An app would probably be a better way, or an access database, but I will admit I don't have the skills for an app, and an access database is just doesn't seem accessible for a lot of people, and it just seems to make it a little more harder to use. So, because part of what I'm thinking is hopefully I will be able to share out what I create as well. I did get some interest from other people about that. So I think a spreadsheet just seems to be, at least for me, seems to be the way to go on this. I did start my spreadsheet. So it was a lot of copying and pasting one evening. There are individual lists, like Weeks Dye Works puts out a sort of official list of what they compare their floss to in the DMC system. I believe other companies do something very similar. And so in some ways you can kind of just tediously copy and paste it and add all of this information, because not every dyer has a color for every DMC. So you can't just dump it into a cell or into a column, but it's not difficult. It's just sort of tedious. But I did start that, and I think I'm going to keep working on it and see where we go. I think it could be helpful. I do think it will be helpful, and we'll work on it. But in the meantime, did I tell you this at the start of this very rambly story? I did reorganize all my floss, so it's back in by dyer. I have not re-alphabetized them, other than just the really easy ones that I don't have that many of, but there are some that it's going to take me a while to re-alphabetize, but I think I will be happy in the end, because that way I'll be able to pull things very easily. And I think on the spreadsheet, I can create a couple of different sheets that organize the data in slightly different ways, so I think it'll be helpful. We'll see. I will keep you posted. But that is kind of the first part of what I'm thinking about in terms of floss organization. But one of the things that I was also reminded of as I was working on it is sort of why I tend to buy some of the floss companies that I do, in addition to the fact that they are newer or that I'm enjoying them, but particularly in terms of the commercial or the more readily known, readily available, more called for companies. I tend to not buy all of them, in part because it is actually fairly important to me that the floss that I'm working with is Colorfast, or as close to Colorfast as it can get. I'm going to have a sip of drink, and then I will continue on why that is important to me. Don't you like this play-by-play of everything that's happening in this video? So the reason that I care about whether or not floss is Colorfast is what I call the potato soup incident of 2010, 2012. I don't actually know. It's the potato soup incident. So this was a time when I was stitching the biggest project, one of the biggest projects I had stitched, which, as you know, I'm not a huge project stitcher, so it's still probably like a medium-sized project. But I was working on a big project. It was one of the first ones that I had worked on. And it was the Six Fat Men series by Lizzie Kate, and it's the little snowmen, and I was stitching them all together. I had never done that before. I'd gotten the frame off of her website, and I was stitching all of them, and I think I was on the 5th or 6th block. Like, I was very far into this project, and I was heading out for the day, and I was taking my project with me because I knew I was going to be away from home, but I wanted to work on this. And then I was also persuaded that I needed to transport some potato soup for this event in my car. And I was assured that this slow cooker that the potato soup was in had a very good seal. I was assured of this. You can see where this story is going. It was not well sealed, and it was sitting in the well of my car. And by the time I got to my destination, there was soup all over the well of my car and all over my cross-stitch project. And I was not going to be home for hours to do anything about this. So fortunately, I feel like I'm sort of like super building up the suspense. The fortunate thing is, at that time, I couldn't afford all the fancy floss. I couldn't afford all of the other things. And so I was stitching on commercially produced even weave. I was stitching with the substitute DMC. And so by the time I got home, the potato soup had dried onto my project. And so I knew it was going to have to be soaking in water. Like, I read up the directions on how to clean your project and do all those things, and it had to soak in the liquid for a while to lift that dried potato soup back off of my project. And because everything that I was using was commercially produced, was Colorfast, it worked out fine. It was amazing. I was thrilled because it all turned out absolutely fine. You could not tell. I was able to finish the project. I finished it into a little pillow. I gifted it to somebody. I was so relieved. But I also know that if I had been stitching that project with the called for threads, which were over-dyed threads, by the time because of the dried soup, because I would have had to soak it, those threads would have run. I've worked with that company enough to know, I know that those threads would have run. If you're familiar with that project, there is a lot of white snow. They would have bled. That project would have been ruined if I had not been working with the DMC. And so ever since then, I've just been very kind of thoughtful and mindful of it. You never know when something unexpected is going to happen to your projects. I am not somebody that when I am done soaks my projects. I know that there are people that do that. That is part of their finishing process. They soak it, they get all of the dyes or the oils from your hands off of your project, and that's part of their process. There are some people who do not do that, do not do anything, simply iron it and it's done. I am somebody that I spritz my projects just with a little bit of water to help with the ironing when I'm done. So most of the time, my projects, regardless of whatever medium, whatever floss or whatever fabric I am using, is not going to be soaking for hours in water. But it will get a little bit of water on it. And there are some floss that I have gotten that even just the moment that floss hits the water, you can tell that dye starts to come out of it, starts to come off of it, because it's not coming out of it. I will get into that. But you never know what's going to happen. Just because I'm careful, just because I don't intend to soak a project in water, doesn't mean that I won't have to at some point. And so it's simply a lesson that I have learned. And I will say all of this, which is to say, very little of what I stitch is intended to be an heirloom piece. Very little of what I stitch is, if it got ruined, for example, I couldn't restitch it. If I really wanted to, I could restitch it. Larger projects like the Christmas market are not something that I do all that often. Much of what I do is, if something absolutely horrible happened, I could restitch it. It's not the end of the world, but I still feel like to me, it's worth the effort that it takes to try and make the supplies that I'm using a little more reliable, to give myself a little bit more peace of mind with what I am using. And for me, what that means is going to some extra steps to try and make the floss color fast, or a little bit more color fast. So, what I do is something that I learned from Jean Farish. Jean Farish is a cross-stitch designer. She's a teacher. She has a floss tube. If you do not watch Jean Farish, I would highly recommend it. She stitches very different things than I do, but again, she is an excellent teacher, and she has been in the business for a very long time and knows what she's talking about. I have very much learned that if Jean Farish says it, you should believe it. She has reasons, she has explanations for what she's doing. She tests things out. And so she has a whole video in which she talks about kind of testing colors, trying to make them color fast, the process that she goes through, because she also, I believe, does this. I will link to the video because I found it very, very helpful. I don't go to quite the lengths that she does, but I do half of the lengths that she does. So what her process essentially is she kind of tested a couple of different things, and she wound up with a process in which she has kind of a little dish of water, I think it's heated water, and she puts one of the Bounce color sheets, color catcher sheets, just a part of one of those, into the water and puts the floss in there. She leaves it for about 3 hours, dumps it out, puts a new color catcher in, new water, and does it for another 3 hours. I don't do mine for 6 hours. I do mine for 3 hours, or about 3 hours is what I do. I feel like, again, the likelihood of me needing to soak a project for more than 3 hours is probably fairly slim, so I am taking some of a risk, but I feel like I have at least gone to some lengths to try and process my floss and give me that peace of mind. So when I was purchasing all of my floss, I very carefully was paying attention to the companies, what was happening with the dye, with the floss as I was using them. Some companies explicitly say they are not color fast. Some companies say that they are. The label is not necessarily accurate, as I have discovered. And so what I really learned is just to test it for yourself and see. So, for example, one of the reasons that I really like Weeks Dye Works is because fairly consistently, very rarely do I ever have dye that leaks off of those floss. I'll put them in, I'll soak them, and 3 hours later, the color catcher really doesn't have anything, the water doesn't have anything in it. And I did that enough times with enough variety of colors, particularly the really dark blues, the dark reds. For some reason, yellows tend to leak a lot. I think it's because of the base brown, I guess. And I found that it happened rarely enough that I decided I don't need to go to the effort to do those. And so I tend to, when I get Weeks floss, I pretty much just put it on my floss drops and go. I don't process it at this point. Classic Colorworks, I found does leak. Actually, it was interesting. When I first started, I felt like I was getting more kind of dye leakage than I have the last couple of times, but I don't know if that's necessarily because they've changed their process in any way, or if it's just the couple of colors that I have gotten haven't leaked as much. Because like I said, I tend to not actually buy their products, in part because it's just one more step that I have to go through. Gentle Art, I found the same thing. Gentle Art almost consistently has color dye that comes out of almost every one. And so to me, it's just one more step that was like, if I don't have to go to that step, great. So unless I really need one of those colors, or I get it in a particular package or a project, I'm happy to not get them. Color and Cotton I have found to be very reliably color fast, so I don't feel like I need to do anything with those. Victorian Motto, yes, you should soak every time. Forbidden Fiber, unfortunately it says that it's color fast, but I fairly consistently get color coming out of at least some of them, so I do process those, etc., etc. And so I spent time kind of figuring out these different companies, and so I also tend to gravitate to buy the companies that maybe I don't have to go through that step with. It doesn't mean that I don't buy the others, but I probably will choose something else first, in part because, as you have learned, I'm also super lazy. So not having to do that is great. Now, does that mean that my results are going to be exactly what you get? Well, actually, probably. But does that mean that every company that I have said, yeah, I've got good results with, that you're not going to get one skein or an occasional skein that leaks or that you have a problem with? No. Like, the only way to really do this and really be sure would be to do every single skein, every company, every time for a long amount of time until you just do not get any color coming out of them. But again, I'm also playing the probability game of like, what's the likelihood that the one of the floss that I didn't process from this one company that otherwise has very good results is also going to be a color that I happen to use in the very rare instance in which I have to actually soak my project. Like, there is a bit of a gamble going on, but it gives me some peace of mind to know that should I ever have another potato soup incident, my project will more than likely be fine. So that is something that some extra lengths that I go to in order to prepare my project. Now, do I do it for every, like if I get, one of those kits that they've kind of pre-selected colors from an over-dyed company, I don't do it. I kind of risk it. But if I know that I'm getting a full skein and it's something I'll be using over time, I do try and take care of it. The other thing that I wanted to say is I think it's a myth. I think it's okay to say that it is a myth. It has not been my experience that if you put your floss in water, if you do this type of thing, that you're losing dye, that somehow the color becomes less vibrant. This is one of the things that Jean Farish talks about in her video. She just says that is just not true. And when you're going through this process, you are not taking dye back out of the skein, of the cotton that it has soaked into. What is coming off is dye that at the molecular level never actually penetrated the fabric to begin with. And so really it is only excess dye that, again, at the molecular level, I think I'm coming up with the right term there, is sitting on the surface of your piece, but is not actually connected with it, hasn't sort of fused with it. I think I'm using fake science words right now, but if there is color coming off of your floss, it's not coming out of your floss. It's coming off the surface. It was never attached to your floss, is essentially a very, very high level way of describing it. So I have not noticed that I have lost vibrancy. I really have not. There is a little bit of a, maybe slightly less of a sheen to it. Like I can kind of look at floss and go, yes, that was actually rinsed very, very well. Like there's a slight difference to kind of the sheen of some of them, but I don't believe that I would say that I have lost vibrancy. It doesn't change the color of the floss to do this. Yes, you're taking excess dye off. It looks a little bit scary, but it is not actually impacting the floss itself. So if that is something that is concerning you or worries you about doing this, well, don't take my word for it, but I do think that you could probably rely on the word of Jean Farish. So for what it's worth, I hope that that will not stop you from doing this if this is something that you think is important to your floss and kind of just the peace of mind that you have with the projects that you're working on. So with that, I think that that is kind of my ramble and chat about floss tonight. I hope it was helpful. Again, anytime I kind of share these things, it's just lessons I've learned and in hopes that it will be helpful to somebody else. So with that, I've got a couple of things to show you before we get to the recent acquisitions portion of the program. I have mentioned in the past that there is a Canadian coffee company that I really like called Balzac's. And part of the reason that I like it, I mean, it's enjoyable, it's fun, you're in Canada, you're having coffee. But part of the reason that I enjoy it is each of their locations has its own design and marketing for it. So this is their Market Street location, and it has this particular design. This is their Stratford one, and it's always kind of themed around the location where the coffee shop is, and there's usually just one in each of these locations. It's a chain, but it's a fairly small chain. And I really enjoy all of the artwork and I enjoy the individuality of it. And you can buy mugs, you can buy all kinds of things that are related to the particular location where you are. And one of the things that I bought the last time I was at a Balzac's is there is a postcard set and it has images from each of the different locations. And I bought them, and originally I was thinking I would turn them into floss drops because that's often what I do with cards, for example. It's a way to save and savor those special things that I've gotten. But what I was realizing is because the art is so large scale, if I cut it into floss drops, I would really be losing too much of the image. You wouldn't really have any idea what it was that the image originally came from. So I came up with the idea instead is I went through this weekend and I laminated each of them, just using the little sheets that you get, kind of manually doing it and then cutting them out. And so this way I have laminated cards with each of the full image on it. And what I intend to do is with each of these at this point, I could then cut, or I could use a little, the larger hole punch and turn them into floss cards. And I thought, you know, you lose a little bit of the image, but you still have a large portion of it. And I think that way I'll be able to enjoy the artwork while also having something for my craft like I had originally planned. So yeah, that's the plan. And I felt like laminating it would just make it a little easier to use. But also what I can then do is I'm waiting to punch the holes out until I really know kind of per project how many I need, because I don't want to cut more if I don't need them. But my plan would be then I could get little stickers so that I can actually label the holes and know what the floss is, but then I can peel them back off because of the laminate, and then I could reuse them for future projects. So with that, I should have a fair good number of little thread cards for a while. So that was just a fun little project that I worked on over the weekend. And I had a couple of other cards that my sister-in-law had got me from a local artist near. It's not one of my videos if I don't at some point wildly misjudge the angle. So I had done those as well, and I think those will be cute. So if you want to do it, have fun. Personalized thread cards. I think it sounds like a good idea. So the next thing that I wanted to show you is some happy mail that I received. A viewer reached out to me, Yvonne, a couple of weeks ago and just said, hey, can I have your address? I'd love to send you something, which was the first time somebody has done that, which is, I mean, my response was like, that's so exciting. I love it. And then the package arrived and I was blown away. Yvonne put together an amazing package of presents, a gift. And she said, you know, she was going through her stash and she actually did some PDF shopping with me in mind and things that I enjoy and sent those along. And I was just, it is overwhelming. It is an amazing gift. So I've already said thank you, but again, thank you. Just to give you an idea of this is this huge stack of kind of magazines and PDF patterns and things that she has collected and actually thought of with me in mind while she was doing this. So it's fantastic. I was flipping through it and just going, yes, I love this. This is such a fun little thing. I can see why you chose this. And so I'm not going to show you everything, in part because not everything has a cover image. And so I don't want to reveal some of those things, but I do have to show you a couple of things. So first of all, because of the Best Bunny Sal recently, she actually sent me a number of bunny patterns. Let me see if I can get that. I mean, look at that little guy. He's so cute. I just automatically assume all animals are he, I think in part because of my two cats, but he's so cute. He's so adorable. And there were several different bunny patterns. And then because of the cats, I did get some cat patterns. One of the ones that I wanted to show you is this one. I mean, this is clearly like an older pattern. I feel like it's one of those, there was that time when there was photography style that was popular where it was almost like you were a floating head and there was a second head of you at a different angle. I feel a little bit like that's what this is evoking, but I just love that little, it's a little white cat kind of outlined. It's not fully stitched. And I think I would probably just do that one. I think that would be cute. I might do it like with black stitching to look like my guy, but I just thought that was really fun. So I got a couple of really cute cat patterns. There's one that I can't show you because it doesn't have a cover image, but it's a cat watching a fireworks display. It's two things in one that I love. So that is definitely going to be on my stitching radar for the summer. The next thing she sent was several different Stitches Through the Years patterns, which I think that their images are just so lovely. I have a couple of their patterns already, but these are just so fun. This one says, your mind is a garden, your thoughts are the seeds. You can grow flowers or you can grow weeds. And the day that I got this, I had been having a really rough time, and I needed that sentiment, a reminder that it's how we think about things. We can impact our own mental processes, and I needed that reminder the day it arrived. So thank you, Yvonne. And then just a couple of other ones. So really fun sets. I'm really happy to have a couple more from that designer. And then some bird patterns. I'm not going to show you everything like I said, but just a couple of other images. So this was just such a pleasant and wonderful, like the package wasn't a surprise in the sense that I knew that somebody had reached out and wanted to send something, but it was a delight. It was a delight to open it and see what was chosen, what was sent, just the plethora of things that were sent, which was the generosity was amazing. But to feel like somebody actually said, I was thinking of you while I was doing this, was really lovely. So Yvonne, thank you. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. And you will definitely see some of these in the future. So that was just a really lovely piece of stitchy kindness that I wanted to share with each of you. So with that, I do have a recent acquisitions portion. If that's not your thing, thank you very much for joining me tonight. I hope that you enjoyed. We'll see you in the next video. And if haul is your thing, stick around because there's a couple of things to show tonight. All right, the first thing that I want to show is another piece of Be Stitch Me fabric. And you will remember from my last video that kind of letting go of some of my fabric is one of the things that I'm currently doing to kind of appreciate and enjoy what I have. So I think that this is my last piece for a while, but as I said, it has nothing to do with the companies or the products that I was purchasing. It was simply an opportunity for me to appreciate and enjoy what I have. But I continue to think that this Be Stitch Me fabric is just lovely. It is the dye, and I've said this before, I love the fact that depending on how you cut these, you get different colors and styles from the dye process itself. So this was the most recent fabric from them, and it's called Grog. So another really wonderful one, and a nice one to add to my collection now I can appreciate it for a while. All right. The next thing to show you is the most recent Broderie and Color box, which is Tom and Lily's subscription box, which I subscribed to. I did let this one go as well, so this is probably the last one of these for a little while. Again, nothing to do with the product, which is lovely, just appreciating what I have. But this one was also a really good box to go out on. So this is, I know I've seen this a couple of places online recently, is a stitched phone cover image. See here. It's at this point the sun is completely set, so the lighting is a little bit pale, but it really is just kind of, let's see here. They look like pansies to me, and so it's going to be these lovely purples and greens. I actually have, amazingly enough, a very similar phone case myself already, so I'm not going to stitch it as a phone case, but the image itself doesn't actually include the cutout because of course it depends on what your phone is. So it is a complete rectangle of a pattern, and I will actually stitch it just as a pattern and probably turn it into a little pillow. But that is one that I received and I'm looking forward to. I think that that is just a really lovely image to include. So I am very pleased about that one. The next couple of things to show you are some of my kind of French and German patterns that I really enjoy. So I have received my most recent edition of Création Porte-Quoi. I have said in the past that there are times where I get issues and I'm like, that's nice. And sometimes I get issues and I'm like, I want to stitch every single one of those. This is one of those issues. There are so many lovely patterns, and I'm going to be like, let's see here. See if we can do this. Alice in Wonderland. I am not like, the book itself, I didn't grow up with Alice in Wonderland as a book experience, and so it's kind of one that I'm like, I read it as an adult and I was like, that's nice. But I have a very sentimental attachment to the Disney animated version, and particularly the art there, but also the art that other people create related to those stories. And so this is just a really fun one. This is stitching. It's kind of different crafts. I know there's probably a better image inside. I'm sorry. It's different crafts, and they're actually pieces that adorn the ends of your magazine holders, which I love because part of the reason that I use them, but I was like, they're kind of ugly or they're not really a style that I like. Who cares? You can cover it up with a cross stitch project. And one is about knitting, one is about sewing, and one is about cross stitch. So definitely on the list. This really fun little cake in the middle. These, what's the style? Belle Epoque. Anyway, look at those little guys on their little swings. Ladies on their swings. A welcome sign. Every one of those I like. But the one that I was not expecting and is my favorite, not on the cover. So you may remember from my last video, I don't know, I maybe mentioned it in passing, only in passing, that I made a 3D carrot. Yeah. Guys, 3D hot air balloons. 3D hot air balloons. Oh my gosh. I need to stitch this. This is going to be mine, and it's 3D, and it's so perfect. I love it. I love it so much. Oh my goodness. You should have seen my face when I saw that. I was delighted. It was amazing. So the other couple of things that I've gotten is I was able to acquire 3 new Christiane Dahlbeck books. And if you remember, she is a German designer that I really like, not as readily available. And so you tend to have to go out of your way to buy her stuff. In one case, I bought a couple of things from the French Needle because they were new and they sent an email, a mass email that was clearly really directed to me. And so therefore I needed to buy some things from the new stock at the French Needle. And then one I actually was able to get on one of the stash unloading sites, which also, of course, I needed to buy because it was there. So this is one of her newest books, and the translation is basically a nice half year, and then this says part 1, which means there's going to be another one of these, and this is also one. There are so many cute patterns in this book. I don't even know where to start. Like, look at this little mouse giving a flower to this little owl, and his facial expression. The fact that you can get a facial expression like that on an owl in cross stitch, that's amazing. That's amazing. I'm not going to show you everything in the book because there are so many things, but this is one that I absolutely love. I mean, look at that rabbit. It is a rabbit on a little wagon speeding down the hill. There's little speed marks. He's speeding down the hill. that one needs to get stitched. And then this one, okay, there's two in here that I want to show you. One is, part of what I really like is each month of the year has its own pattern. And so the fact that this then has a second book coming out means that I will have all of the months to stitch at some point. And then this is beautiful. I know the bees are all the rage. They're great patterns. I like it. But as you know, I'm more of like a cat pattern person, but this bee pattern is stunning. It is stunning. Let me see. There we go. The lifelike nature of those bumblebees, I am in awe. I don't know how somebody does this in cross stitch, but I'm going to have to do it in cross stitch because I love that. I mean, and then the flowers are just, that is beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. I'm gonna have to stitch that. So that was a nice half year. Very excited about that one. Then I also got just a tiny little booklet. It has just a couple of patterns in it. And this one is all themed on penguins. And what I really like is it has some of the very realistic looking penguins. And then it also has these little guys in scarves with a little heart over them. It's got both styles. It doesn't, oh, sorry. This is the one with the little guy with the scarf. This one just has little guys with hearts over them. So it's just like two totally different styles of the same subject, and they're all adorable. They are all so cute. So those are the projects that are in just this little teeny tiny booklet. Definitely gonna have to stitch some of those. The guy with his little scarf. Oh my gosh. And the last one is also a Christiania Dahlbeck book that I got. This is the one that I got on online on the Stash Unload site. Again, several beautiful projects, but this one in particular is my favorite. The delicacy of that wreath and the little tag. Beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. I love her work. So I was very happy to get to acquire all of those recently. They will have to be stitched sometime soon. So the couple of other things that I've gotten were mostly also on Stash Unload sites. So one, I got a complete kit. Let me see here if I can take this out here. This is a Jenny Bean's Christmas Sampler by Shakespeare's Peddler. And you know, I'm not much, this is more kind of what I would consider like a historical reproduction sampler style. I know it's not completely a reproduction sampler, but that's kind of what I would consider the style to be, which is not something that I tend to stitch very often, but I love everything about this pattern. It said, and had I but 1 penny, thou shouldst have it to buy gingerbread. Oh my gosh, I love it. And it does have some of the alphabet on it. Actually has the whole alphabet. I take it all back. It's a historical sampler. I don't think it's a reproduction sampler. I don't know anything about these things. Look at that house. Look at that alphabet and all those different letters. Look at the fact that somebody wants to give you gingerbread. It's adorable. It did come with the fabric. It came with all of the floss, which you'll be pleased to know is Gentle Art, so you know that that one's gonna go in some water. But it was just really fun to have all of that and to see things, you know, I think I've said this before, like sometimes it's just really fun, no matter what style, what kind of things that we gravitate toward, to be open to see something that is not your usual and to just fall in love with it is part of what's so fun about this hobby too. So I really, I was really happy to get that one. I also got a Prairie Schooler and it's cardstock. I mean, you'll be surprised to know. K is for kitty. Look at that expression on his face. That one's gonna get stitched. Constant Cat Sal. Then I got a Family Christmas 2 by Mary Beale. And let me see here. Yeah, I think it was this one. This tiny little one. It says, "Oh, come all ye faithful," with the little church. I just thought that was really cute. And it's just one simple piece of cardstock. Really liked that one. I was able to pick up a Birds of a Feather. I don't think this is one of the rare or out of print ones. I think it's fairly readily available. I don't know. And it's land that I love. I'm not a huge patriotic stitcher. But I just love this one. I like the little, I assume that this is a little fox. Little fox running along the sloping hills toward that house. I love the lettering in land that I love and the little birds up above. It's delightful. And the fish in the water. This piece is delightful. It is, I love it. It's just delightful. So those were the things that I got on stash and loading sites. And the last one is a series. It's a filigree series. And I think I saw this on the District Stitcher, I think. And there's one for each season, and it is a mountain scene that shows a different depiction of each season in the mountain. So there's autumn, summer with the sheep, and then spring. I thought those were they were so unique. I have more seasonal sets at this point than I will ever be able to stitch or put up in my house. But this one I thought was I love the uniqueness of this. This is something that I had never seen before, and I really liked that. And so this was one where I just thought, I just want to have that. I think I want to stitch this. This probably got catapulted to the top of a seasonal series that I want to work on, but I love that. It's just so unique. So I did get those. So that's the end of my acquisitions, the end of the haul section. And with that, I think the end of the video. So thank you for joining me. It is, like I said, I look forward to this. I think about it. I appreciate the opportunity to get to spend a little bit of time with you every couple of weeks. And I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you come back. I hope that you got some good stitching in while we were visiting together. Let me know what you're working on. What have you been surprised by that was outside of your wheelhouse that you just had to stitch? Or have you been inspired by something that you saw on another channel? Somebody who gave you stitchy kindness, all of those things. Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear your thoughts on floss organization and whether or not you should stick it in water or any of those things. Feel free to leave me a comment. I appreciate it. If you haven't, please like and subscribe. Do all of the fun things that YouTube loves about this side of things. And I will see you again in a couple of weeks. So with that, enjoy your evening. Happy stitching and happy day. Bye.